Welcome back. I just picked up this 2025 Yamaha YZ250FX, and in this video I'm going to start getting it set up to race and ride. The YZ250FX has been redesigned for 2025 using the frame and chassis that originally came out on the 2023 YZ450F. Those changes then got applied to the YZ250F in 2024, and now in 2025 the YZ250FX is finally getting those changes. Most of the changes are with the chassis and the bodywork. The engine is pretty much the same. Most of the part numbers for the engine are the same as the previous year model YZ250FX, with the only exception being the timing chain and the components related to that. All the bodywork is new, including the airbox design and the intake design. The previous generation had the intake ductwork that came from the airbox down the top of the shroud and had the opening here, but they did away with that on the new models, and the intake's all here, which makes the bike a lot narrower up front. I really like that a lot. So I've got new plastics to go on the bike over there. I definitely need to get that done tonight. And then I've got some other things I want to get done. But I definitely want to get the handguards on, so I'm going to start with the handlebars and getting that set up the way I like it. I'm going to try to get enough of it done where I can ride tomorrow. We've got a really brief weather window. We've got a really nice day coming up tomorrow, followed by a pretty long period of very cold, rainy weather. So I really want to get out on the trails tomorrow and ride it for the first time. I'm going to remove this grip on the clutch side because I want to check out something with the handlebars that I'll explain in a second. And this is what I suspected. So Yamaha uses these thin wall bars, and you can't put threaded inserts into them. I suspected I would need to change the bars because that's the way my last two Yamahas were as well, but I just wanted to verify that. So if you look at this handlebar, for example, I've threaded the end of that bar, and this will screw in. And once that's tightened up and on the bike, then this will be the bolt to hold on the handguard. I bought this bike from Longshore Cycle Center in Florence, Alabama. I highly recommend Longshore Cycle if you're in the market for a Yamaha, Kawasaki, or Honda. Longshore Cycle Center is a multi-generation family-owned business. They're heavily involved in off-road racing, and they understand off-road bikes and riders very well. They're a sponsor of SECA Racing, and the best part is they don't play games with customers when it comes to pricing. Here I'm just removing all the controls and switches so I can change out the handlebar. I've included a complete list of parts I'm using along with links in the video description. If you use one of my Amazon links, I may receive a small commission. It doesn't cost you any extra, but it helps support the channel. And it works for anything you're buying on Amazon. If you use one of my links, it helps me out. I'm installing a Pro Taper handlebar here. I've had this handlebar laying around the garage for a while and decided to use it for now. This bend is almost identical to the Yamaha stock bend. I may change it to something with less sweep in the near future, but this will work for now. These top clamps are from my Cycra Pro Bend Ultra HCM kit. This handguard kit replaces the top clamps and attaches the handguard bar to the center mount. When it's all installed, it's a really strong, really clean handguard setup. These are Torque 1 Enduro lock-on grips. I've been using Torque 1 Enduro grips for a couple of years, and they seem to be the perfect size. They're smaller than the ODI road grips, but still have some cushion on them. I'm moving my start button to the left side. That works well for me with the recluse and hair scramble starts. Now I'm going to finish installing the Cycra handguards with the bars followed by the plastic guards. Okay, got the bars changed out. I got the new grips and handguards on there. Got things arranged the way I like them. I think the next step is going to be plastics in the seat. I'm not going to ride it with those stock plastics. I'm going to save those for when I sell the bike. So I'm in the process of replacing the plastics. I thought it'd be a convenient time to go ahead and put the AG801 battery in there, but I discovered something interesting. The battery's in a new position on this bike, and the stock battery is more narrow on the top. So the seat won't fit over this AG801 battery. This area right here is too narrow. These two tabs go into these two slots. So when you try to put it on there, it won't go down over the battery. I don't know if that could be trimmed enough to fit over the battery or not, but I'm putting a new seat on the bike anyway, so I thought I probably should just try the seat concept seat. And I turned it over to take a look. Guess what? It's a lot wider in this area. Fits on with no problem. Thank goodness. I definitely wanted to run my AG801 battery. So just like that. Fits right around it. I spent a fair amount of time transferring the various parts and hardware from all the original plastics to my aftermarket plastics. The new seat came with a black cover for the gas cap cover, so to match the seat. The instructions that came with the seat recommended installing the black cover over the top of the blue cover, so that's how I'm going to do it. Do you ever have one of those simple projects that ends up taking 10 times longer than it should? My electric stapler wouldn't get into some of the tight spaces on the rear of this cover, so I had to get out my pneumatic stapler with a slimmer tip. The pneumatic stapler is not great for this type of work because it really has too much pressure. All right, not perfect, but I've definitely seen worse. All right, this is starting to look like my bike now. Got my plastics on there, got the new seat, and put the seat cover on that gas cap cover. I put my battery in there while I had everything apart. Oh, and I got the frame guards installed as well. I'm glad I went with blue this time. I've always done silver in the past, and I think those blue ones look good. Just like with the previous generation, I had to trim this frame guard down the bottom a little bit to not interfere with that kickstand bracket. All right, it's the next morning, and I made some good progress last night, but I want to get a couple of more things done before I take this thing out on the trails today. I want to get a heavy-duty tube installed in the front because the factory tubes are extremely thin, and I want to get tubeless installed in the rear. I got a question on a recent video on why I prefer a tube in the front instead of tubeless. The primary reason I run tubeless in the rear is for the ability to run lower tire pressures than I could with a tube. I typically run 5 to 6 PSI in the rear and lower if it's really slippery. I don't run tubeless in the front because there's no real benefit for the type of riding I do. For the front tire, I need it to always maintain its shape and not roll over in the turn, so I would never run really low pressure on my front tire. I did have tubeless in the front tire of my KTM 250X EW for a period of time, and I found that tire changes were difficult because the front rim is more narrow and there's not as much space to push the tire bead down into the drop center. And it just wasn't worth the extra expense and trouble because I'm not going to run really low tire pressures in the front tire. I like these IRC tubes for the front. They're very thick and heavy duty, but they're not as heavy as, say, a 3 or 4 millimeter thick tube would be. These tubes are just paper thin and really easy to pinch flat. I've never flatted one of these. All right, I just found another notable change on my 2025 YZ250FX. They're using the larger axle from the YZ450F on these bikes. So my spare wheel set on the rear wheel, I'm gonna have to make some changes to that to make it work. Probably new bearings and spacers. All right, got my front tube installed and tubeless installed on the rear. By the way, I've got a complete video on installing tubeless, and I'll put a link to that in the video description. I also put these Flow Motorsports pegs on while I was at it. I'm not gonna have time to install the Recluse Radius CX 4.0 because I wanna make a separate video on that, and I'll need to take my time with that. I'll do that video after my first ride, and then shortly after that, I'm going to take the suspension off and take it down to Steve at Fast Lap so he can work his magic. While the suspension's off of it, I plan to grease all the linkage bearings and the swing arm bearings, grease the steering stem bearings as well. The next video you see after this one should be my first ride video. I'm planning on doing a series of videos on this bike before the race season starts. So be sure you're subscribed so you don't miss those, and let me know in the comments what you'd like to see and what your questions are around this bike. Thanks for watching. This is my first ride on my 2025 YZ250FX.